This is a moment that is pivotal in Earth. Those are the words of the beloved great divine director in 1995. And I think we can say the same for the moment that we're currently experiencing. In these times of great change and turmoil, it's incumbent upon each of us to maintain the vision of Saint Germain's golden age and why we're here and what role is ours as we are transitioning from the age of Pisces to Aquarius, giving birth to a golden age of freedom and enlightenment. So we are grateful for the great divine director for his message today. So what do we know about this great master who doesn't even give us his name? Well, we know that the great divine director is a cosmic being of great importance to the earth in this current cycle. And of course, we know that the great divine director is not his name, but rather his title. He said that he is known as the great divine director because he has merged his consciousness with the cosmic cycles of God's divine plan for untold universes of light. Untold universes of light. His causal body is a giant blue sphere that surrounds the entire planet. The entire planet. So you can imagine the importance in this cycle of the great divine director on Earth. And get this, within that sphere, there are grids and force fields through which the delivery of the judgment shall pass. He is the Manu of the seventh root race. He presides spiritually over the continent of South America, where the seventh root race is destined to incarnate in the Aquarian age. Long ago, he passed the initiations that placed him at a cosmic levels of service and qualified him to become the Manu of the seventh root race. So what is a Manu and what is the seventh root race? Well, the Manu embodies the archetype of an entire life wave, a life wave of souls who will incarnate on the earth at a certain period. And of course, in this case, we're talking about the seventh root race. A root race is a group of souls who embody together and have a unique divine plan and mission to fulfill on earth. And there are 7 root races that we know of. The first 3 root races on earth lived in purity and innocence in 3 golden ages. And that was before the fall of Adam and Eve that we read about in the scriptures. And these 3 root races ascended from earth after the cycle of embodiments that were with their twin flames and ascended back to God. It was during the fourth root race, which was on the continent of Lemuria, that the fall recorded in the Bible took place under the influence of fallen angels that were known as serpents. So that's where the concept of the serpent in the garden comes from. So since that time, the 5th and 6th root races have embodied on the earth. We are in the cycle when the 7th root race will embody in the continent of South America. Now, root races are made up of souls that have not previously embodied. So they come fresh, untainted from earthly experiences in a fallen culture. And each root race comes with the inherent knowledge of their sponsor, which of course for this Aquarian age is Saint Germain. And Jesus was the sponsor of the Piscean age, which is concluding as we give birth to the Aquarian age. The great divine teacher is also the teacher of Saint Germain and many other masters, including El Morya and Jesus. Saint Germain calls him the guru of all gurus. And the matrix for his powerful novena can be found in the Pearls of Wisdom, volume 18, number 32, which was dictated by Saint Germain. The great divine director is also the author of the mechanization concept. Now, these are a series of the Pearls of Wisdom that sheds great light upon the challenges that we face in Armageddon and bringing in the new age. He's also a member of the Karmic Board, as we know, as we give our novena every day. He's a member of the Darjeeling Council, and he also occupies the 12 line of the clock of God power in Capricorn of the 12 solar hierarchies on the cosmic clock. Many pictures depict him with his blue belt, with dazzling jewels so rare as the decree goes, and light emanating from his heart, throat, and head. When you give this decree, you can connect with these light rays for his protection, and he'll wrap you in his blue belt and protect you and protect your chakras and assist you in bringing forth your divine plan. The great divine director said, I pray that you will call to me, for I have within my consciousness the scroll of the divine plan for every living soul on Terra and in the vast beyond. Mother said that it's a great invitation to call to the great blue causal body of the great divine director to receive your divine plan for the remainder of your incarnations. El Morya tells us that the great divine director has sponsored Europe for thousands of years. He established the House of Rakazi, the Royal House of Hungary, and because of this, he's also known as the Master R for the House of Rakazi. So if you hear about Master R, you'll know they're talking about the great divine director. In addition to the Rakazi mansion in Transylvania, he maintains a focus in the Cave of Light in India. And this focus is very interesting because this is where advanced initiates go, and he works to help them purify their four lower bodies of any remaining karma so that they have purified vehicles to perform their service on earth prior to their ascension. So perhaps you might want to petition to go to the Cave of Light in India. And as you'll hear in his dictation, he has this relationship to South America. So the great divine director is a powerful being that's certainly worth our while to get to know, to become one with, to take advantage of his assistance in revealing our divine plans, his assistance in the fulfillment of our own mission, as well as the purification and the preparation of our being for our ascension. I can testify, since living in South America for the last 12 plus years, I can attest that I've always felt the presence of the great divine director here in South America. I knew he had other retreats, and I knew he didn't necessarily have a retreat here, but it's like he's suspended in the air and his whole being encompasses this continent. And I have felt that always. He's very much here, even though he has other retreats around the planet. In his dictation, My Vision of the Future, Be Players on My Team, he begins by confirming the joint mission of North and South America. He addresses us as stalwart pillars of Ascension's flame. And he says, I speak to you this day of the mighty figure 8, which connects North and South America. And we know that that mighty figure 8 flow, the nexus, is in Panama. I speak to you of your joint mission, and I ask you, beloved, one and all, to become one in the sacred fire of my causal body, the blue sphere of my causal body, and the violet sphere of my causal body. Keep in mind, the decrees to the great divine director also count as violet flame. And why is this? We learn because he also administers the use of the disc of light that focuses the whirling action of the violet flame. And as this disc of fire rotates at the speed of light in a clockwise direction, it draws into the center the misqualified substance in your electronic belt and in your four lower bodies. So you can kind of think of it like visualize it like a giant sanding machine, if you can think of that, that's just whirling at the speed of light and sparks come off of it as it creates a vortex that draws into itself all the energy that needs to be transmuted. He continues, understand, beloved, that we have much to do to make this hemisphere a fitting place for souls of light who must take embodiment. We have not had the opportunity in many centuries, and in some cases, in thousands of years, to assemble a group such as yourselves, who remember from the ancient days of Atlanta and Lemuria what you did, what you built, and what you can build again and bring forth again. So we have this divine memory and accomplishment in our etheric and causal bodies, and we come to build that and bring it forth again. He says, this do, but in this hour and in this age, do it because you have the science of the spoken word. You have access to your causal body of light and the messenger who stands with you day after day for the exorcism of all burdens that would thwart your mission. This is a moment that is pivotal in the earth. Therefore, let's discuss it. Then he asks us for a higher level of self-discipline and self-sacrifice. He says, I am the house of Rakazi. I have trained many an ascended master, and I would train you also. I ask you to see the exactitude of what is the discipline of the mind, what is the listening to the heart, what is the listening to the Holy Christ self within. If you would beget souls of light, then set the example. There is indulgence in the four lower bodies on the part of all peoples on the earth. And I do not exclude those other nations and continents because I'm focusing here because of the great civilization that was once in South America and then must come again. So I speak to you, beloved, and I tell you, though you have the violet flame and the decrees and much to your credit in self-discipline and in moving mountains to bring the teachings to thousands upon thousands of individuals, yet I tell you, I exact from you a higher self-discipline and a higher self-sacrifice. When such a cause as this is at stake, then all must look to an acceleration to complete it. For you know that when you stop and start, you lose momentum. And when you proceed too slowly, then the entire momentum collapses. As with all those who have a calling, whether in the arts or science, education, or any field, those who are determined to bring forth into the physical octave, even the light of God that never fails, must look to themselves and say, this is what we must look to ourselves and say. So listen to these words. We are almost as progenitors of a new race. We must rescue the people from their diets, from their drugs, from their moving into the rock music that takes them down into the bottomless pit. Yes, we must set an example, and we must become visible, and we must prepare ourselves, and we must lead the people of this planet out of the darkness of materialism, where all they think of now is money and the markets of Europe and the markets of Asia, and where are there more and more markets to make more and more money in order to enjoy the good life. Those are the things we need to say to ourselves. He says, oh, materialism is a serious cancer, beloved, a very serious cancer, for it deprives the brain of creativity and ingenuity in those fields that must be passed on to generations following. Therefore, we do have concern. And as we have said before, we are not allowing the members of this root race to come into embodiment only to be burdened by the existences that many have already found. Those existences are unacceptable. Then he gives us warnings and instructions, 3 warnings and instructions. First, he says, teach the children or lose the nation. He says, therefore I call to you, for you have named yourselves as leaders, as the avant-garde, who seized the torch of this teaching. You understand the meaning. You understand what it can do for the schools of the United States, which are so far behind many of the schools in the world. And thus, beloved, do you not know, those of you who take such pride in America, that your nation will become a second and third rate nation going down the ladder simply because you have not trained your children. You have not educated them. You have not allowed them to learn their phonograms. You have allowed those who are not qualified to teach to enter the public school systems. And only the very few amongst the children in the private schools do have the true tutoring that they need. What shall become of America when so many students from foreign countries who exceed them enter the universities in America, as they have been doing now for decades? You are about to lose this country, beloved, and you had better do something about it. This message came in 1995, remember, and see where we are today. It is seemingly imperceptible, but none can deny it any longer. You have to wear blinders to miss it, he says. You see the anger in the youth. You see the division between this decade and centuries before, when mothers were in the home, when the food was pure, when the children were loved and where they had self-esteem, and certainly the values that were carried down through the centuries. Beloved ones, when you see so many children without purpose, when you see the faces of children in the country that has the greatest resources of food, and you see that these children are eating such foods as to cause them to have a compromise in their very mission, even at the most tender ages. It is an absolute pity, beloved, that the West has so indulged itself. And so you will see those of the East who have been self-disciplined for centuries, and you've seen them already, and they have charged forward to the front lines and left behind those who are still living on the momentums that they had in their 20s and 30s. And the second that he says is develop the heart. I tell you, beloved, technology demands a higher level of education, but above all, it demands the development of the heart. For the human brain alone and the body alone are not sufficient when there is so much to learn and so much to internalize and so much competition besides. Therefore, what is the most important role of father and mother? Why, it is to develop the heart chakra with tremendous love, with tremendous application of these methods of teaching children that you're hearing about, developing the will of God and encompassing in that will of God the honor of God. The honor of God, even as Becket said to Henry, when did you begin to love God? And Becket said, I began to love the honor of God. If you cannot know God, you can know his qualities. And let us begin with honor. Honor is to be honorable toward the children in the streets, the have-nots, and those who have been indulged and then neglected. When will you do when you pass the torch to them? This is a monumental challenge. I say you are futurists, one and all. You can look into the future, even as you can look into the mist of the distant continents that are no more. You can see the repetition of cycles of history. You know you have reincarnated again and again, only to return, only not to have the violet flame or the ascended masters. And finally, you have found that alchemy of the Holy Spirit. Finally, you have come to the conclusion, I can do something for this planet. I can do something for my town, my children, my world. I can do it, and I will do it. For who will do it if I do not? This is my calling. It belongs to me. I shall seize it, and I shall run with it, as an Olympic runner runs with his torch. So finally, we have the tools and the knowledge in the outer that we can act upon. And the masters have said, how America goes, the world goes. And we have to look at where America is currently going. And as students and chelas of the Ascended Masters, we need to look at it from the ascended master perspective. That is the perspective of our Christ selves in the I am presence of each one of us. It doesn't matter what political party or none that you're part of or have been all of your life. We need to be above human politics. And we need to be above personalities. The personality and style of a general in the field is very different from the personality and style of a monk in a monastery. Is one better than the other? I think not. We all have our own calling. We all have our dharma to fulfill. So what do we see in America today? It's time to look at where the current leadership of America is taking the country. Are we to accept that the unborn child can be murdered in the womb up until the moment of birth? Is that of God? Do we want to be part of that? When we were on staff in the 70s, Mother had bumper stickers made that said, "Abortion is the first-degree murder of God." And believe me, that was extremely controversial at that time. But that is how strong the masters feel about this issue, about abortion, back then and now. In addition, the masters have told us that abortion is the vulnerability of America, that our spiritual protection is in jeopardy as long as abortion is sanctioned by the nation. And here we are being forced now to fund abortions with our tax money, not just in the United States, but now we're going to send money around the world to propagate this travesty. And what about Archangel Michael's sponsorship of law enforcement and El Morya, who's the very embodiment of the law? We see today a war on law enforcement, as well as not arresting those who are breaking the law, or arresting them and then letting them go free the next day after their crime was committed with no accountability. Now, are there abuses in law enforcement? Absolutely. And those need to be dealt with appropriately. But that is not a valid argument for what we're seeing today. Also, there are those serving in the Congress of the United States calling for extreme measures regarding not holding people accountable who commit serious crimes. I can understand someone's opposition to the death penalty. I don't understand the calls of some of our representatives to not just stop executing criminals, but to commute their sentences, let them out. They've been convicted of their brutal crimes by their peers to the law, and many have had numerous appeals, but just let them out. By the way, Mother said that the masters are not against capital punishment. You might say, why? Wow, that's kind of different. But here's the reason. Because in the case of such serious crimes, which is usually why you have a death penalty, it's usually because you have taken the life or lives of others. She said it actually helps the soul to immediately balance the karma by giving up their life so the soul can move on more freely. Do we ever think of that? Some in Congress are also calling to eliminate prisons entirely. Rather than reforming problems in the justice system, get rid of it, no accountability. And what about immigration at the southern border? Tell me, does it make sense and is it moral during a time that we've been told is this raging pandemic to bring in others from other countries who have not been vetted or even tested for the virus? When the economy has been shut down for almost a year, when so many Americans are suffering? Americans who haven't been able to get jobs or go to work. How will these folks coming in going to support themselves when so many citizens are in need? Not to mention, again, the health concerns. And I don't know, I hardly want to get started on the violations of our First Amendment of freedom of speech, which is a very serious issue at this time. all this cancel culture, wanting to go after deprogramming those conservatives, Christians, deprogramming. If it weren't so serious, in fact, when I first heard that, taking away the children, deprogramming also, I just had to laugh, even though it is very serious. But I laughed because we went through this in the 70s and 80s when they were deprogramming members of the church. Couldn't believe in the ascended masters. They had to deprogram people. Here we are again. I could go on and on about the things that are currently happening in our nation that are not in alignment with the laws of God and go against what the masters have told us. But we have to ask why. Why are these radical decisions being made? Decisions that are not in the best interest of America or her citizens. We need to be fully awake. It's incumbent upon us who profess to be the hands and feet of the masters on earth to bring in the golden age, to rise above the human nonsense and stand for God truth and support those in leadership that espouse it. Between the biblical scriptures and the teachings of what the ascended masters have given us, we have ample clarity and direction on what that means and what is God's will for America. There's a reason why we have decrees in a song that says, America, awake. The great divine director continues. Saint Germain has invited those of Central and South America to come to Summit University this summer. It is for a reason, beloved. Saint Germain, along with the first ray masters, desires to train you for your mission and to accelerate the giving forth of the teachings. It is imperative, therefore, that I have you. And if you cannot come this year, then come next. And it's important, he says, that one of these years we go to South America to teach you there, so that many who do not have the funds to make such an expensive trip may receive our representatives and may even receive the messenger, so that we may have these teachings brought directly to you in your nations. Now, this dictation was given in 1995. Since then, there has been Summit University in South America. But it was in 1994 and 95 where I traveled throughout Latin America, working with the Ascended Master study groups, giving lectures, doing media appearances. And it was all in preparation before the messenger's trip there. So 1995, then in 1996, that is when Mother went on a stump to South America. Now, when I was in South America, I will tell you, I have met beautiful souls of light that were keeping the flame in their cities and their countries. And I found that the people in these countries in South America were hungry for the teachings of the Ascended Masters, and they wanted Mother to come and teach them. We had over 1,000 in some cities who would come and stay for an all-day seminar. So there was great hunger. And in South America, I visited the city of Brasilia in Brazil, which is interesting because the great divine director spoke about Brasilia in 1961 in a dictation through Mark Prophet. He said, today in South America, there now arises a transcendent and beautiful beginning in the land of Brazil. In the city of Brasilia, there has been created a beautiful setting and climate for the government over which we will preside during the reign of the seventh root race. Now, Brasilia, I did get an opportunity to visit there, even though I didn't have an event there, but it's a very unique city in the sense of the original capital of Brazil was Rio de Janeiro, which is on the coast. And they decided at one point, which I believe was around the 1960s, that they wanted the capital of the country to be more in the center. Brazil is a very big nation. So they literally searched and found spots with the latitude, longitude exactly that they wanted. Because underneath in the ground in Brazil, there are many, many crystal formations. That's where many crystals come from. So they found this perfect place with the right vibrations, literally, that they wanted to have their capital. But this was in the middle of the country with nothing there, nothing. It was just open ground. So they brought in every single brick to build that city. And the president, even after a certain amount was built, went and lived in a tent-like structure while they were building this city, which took about 41 months. So it was very fascinating because it was a very specifically designed city. And they said it was laid out in the shape of an airplane. Its fuselage was the monumental axis, and there were two wide avenues flanking a massive park. And then you would go to one section of the town would be all the medical facilities. Another section would be education. Another would be the three branches of the government. And there were no traffic lights. I don't know if that's the way it is now, but then there were just the circles of traffic and everything just moved very harmoniously. Now there's a lot of these circles in South America now, but there's also traffic lights. So I don't know how it is now, but that's how it was then. And it was a very interesting and fascinating study at the time. So then 1996, beginning on February 26th, this is when the messenger and with her support team departed on a 33-day stumping tour of South America. And here's the title: Saint Germain sends his messenger and the 7 archangels to South America to inaugurate the Aquarian age on Earth. I had the privilege of organizing that trip and traveling with Mother as her primary assistant. There were 15 of us, including Mother's 3-year-old son, Seth, at the time, which made it very interesting. We visited 7 cities, beginning in Argentina, Buenos Aires, which is the capital, Porto Alegre, Santos, and Sao Paulo in Brazil, Bogota and Medellin in Colombia, and the last stop was Quito, Ecuador. In each of the city, Mother delivered a dictation from Saint Germain and from one of the 7 archangels. And then she also delivered her keynote address that was entitled Saint Germain's Prophecy for the Aquarian Age in each of those cities. Thousands attended these events, and the Aquarian age was inaugurated on Earth. The third point that the Great Divine Director says to us: be sculptors of the profile of self. Be ye therefore sculptors, sculpting and resculpting the profile of self. This is my call to you. Be sculptors of the profile of identity that you desire to see. That which we desire to see means, what do you want to look like? What are you trying to improve? And how will it look when you become what you want to become? So we put forth that image, and that is what we work. It is the key to precipitation, as we know. Pass into the violet flame, he says, all records of this life and past lives, and do so daily. Thereby liberate the soul to rise in an upward spiral, for her goal is to reach the secret chamber of the heart, to merge with the Christ flame, the holy Christ flame of the Lord Jesus Christ. So he's talking about the soul that is anchored in the seat of the soul chakra, which is 2 below the heart chakra, for the soul to rise and become one with the Christ that is in the threefold flame centered in the heart chakra. He says, you are architects, but begin with a block of marble and then sculpt the true identity, made in the image and likeness of Adam Kadmon, the truly spiritual archetype of humanity. And Adam Kadmon comes from the Kabbalah, where the divine archetype of man and woman is referred to and known as Adam Kadmon. He says, we want to see yourselves as you were in the last golden age of South America. We want you to go back to those records, to clear them, to see what is the greatest impediment to the balance of the threefold flame. And neglect not to observe how much hot and spicy foods you partake of, which allows you to become yin and then off balance and then ill. The brain must become yang. The heart must be filled with self-sacrificing love. In the mystery of the Christos, the seed of light within you, you shall find the original pattern. You shall go back. You shall build again and again and again upon the ruins of these civilizations. It will take the combined forces, talents, momentums of those of the entire hemisphere to accomplish this. Thus, we rejoice that there's a figure-8 movement of souls coming to North America and souls going to South America. Such a mutual understanding, such an interchange of talents. This is ideal. Sometimes people ask us, well, why are you in South America? What drew you there? And we don't go into this kind of reason in detail, but we do usually end up saying we felt called to be here. We were drawn here. He says, I am called a great divine director, and there's good reason. For I am an architect of civilizations. I am an architect even of those who come to embody in the seventh root race, thus called to me to understand how to build and how to build strong foundations from the square of the pyramid to its capstone. Called to me, for I have many, many scientists, architects, teachers, experts in every field. From those fields, I bring those who will teach you. Some will come in embodiment, some through the seventh root race. Others are ascended masters or work in the universities of the spirit in the heaven world. Then he asks us for a pledge. He says, but all together, all the hosts of the Lord and all of you who remember who you are, we together, beloved, let us pledge ourselves at the altar of God this day that we shall see the correction in the consciousness of the sixth root race, which is largely made up of those who are the followers of the world teachers, Jesus and Kuthumi, that we shall see to it that the seventh root race shall have the foundations, the teachers, the loving parents, the wise ones to lead them on the course of the seven rays to their ultimate fulfillment in freedom. This is my vision of the future. I seal it in your heart. May you, one and all, be players on my team for this miraculous future of the golden age in South America. Beloved great divine director, our hearts overflow with thy love, with thy sponsorship, with thy sharing with us this day. We are so grateful to be your Chila, to be the students of the Ascended Masters, to have this teaching and to know, to remember our holy calling, that no matter what happens, no matter what the external circumstances appear, no matter what appearances in our life within this world, we know God truth. We know what is meant to be. And we hold that vision for Saint Germain's golden age. And we call to you for divine direction so that we will individually fulfill our divine plan. We will collectively fulfill our divine plan and return unto our God and bring many, many others on that same path. We are so grateful. We are so grateful. In the name of the living Christ, amen.